Hi, my name's Dan Knight. I'm a minister at the Overland Park Church of Christ. I am, and even if this review gets out on the street, I hope I still am a minister at the Overland Park Church of Christ. I've been here for 20 years, and I'm here to review the book, Pastrix, The Cranky, Beautiful Faith of a Sinner and Saint, by Nadia Bolz-Weber. It's a delightful book. Some would call it a dangerous book. It is definitely challenging, and it's a book that needs to be read by a lot of people. There's one reason why it might not be read, and we'll get to that in the review. But I just want to be able to share a few thoughts with you about the book, why I recommend it. One of the reasons I'm reviewing it is because I felt a kinship with the author on some of the details of her story. She says that her background is Church of Christ. I was baptized and became a part of the Church of Christ when I was 16 years old. So I went through some of the processes that she's talking about, but certainly not exactly. My own story, my own dysfunctional family is a lot different. And the second thing that I have in common that struck me was in 1988, when she did her short stint at Pepperdine University, I was also a student at Pepperdine University. Now, I'd been in South America for 11 years and come back to go to Pepperdine and was working in the inner city of Los Angeles, so I didn't see a lot of the other students. So I'm going to touch base on some of the things that are in this book and just share them with you, and hopefully this will be a helpful review for you. The book opens with the best one-liner I have ever read at the beginning of a book. I've shared it with several people and they laugh out loud when I read this line. And I'm going to have to do something different here. I'm not going to say all the words that she writes, having concern for the tender ears of some of the people that might want to see this review. So instead of sharing some of the vulgar words that she uses, obscenities actually, I will use some similar words, similar obscenities in Spanish. I got the idea because I know that when Jewish people read the Old Testament, when rabbis read the Old Testament, they see one particular word, it's an extremely holy word, and they, instead of read that, they substitute another word. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be substituting words for some of the words, because I thought that would be better than having the bleeping sound every time I wanted to read it. So she starts out with this, Carajo. I thought to myself, I'm going to be late to New Testament class. It's a great line. It's a great line, especially when the first word is in English for you. The book is definitely the author's own story, and sometimes that can sound or come across narcissistic. I think the author, Nadia Bolz-Weber, I think she avoids that narcissism with a certain humility, self-deprecating humor. But the first chapter ends as part of her story, and she says, and having seen it, I couldn't help but point it out. For reasons I'll never quite understand, I realized that I had been called to proclaim the gospel from the place where I am and proclaim where I am from the gospel. What had started in early sobriety as a reluctant willingness to start praying again had led to my returning to Christianity, and now had led to something even more preposterous. I was called to be a pastor to my people. I also liked what she said in the second chapter. 12-year-old Church of Christ kids experience a wave of devotion like a great awakening comprised only of 6th graders. She's talking about the pressure in Churches of Christ when you're about 12 years old to be baptized if you haven't made that decision already, just out of fear of hell. And then also in the second chapter there's this comment. If feminist scholar Mary Daly was right, that if God is male, then male is God, then there was some undoing to be done inside of myself after a childhood of being told that God is male and I am not. But 6th grade Jimmy over there is. Now, one of the impressive things about Nadia Bolz-Weber's book is the fact that she doesn't play the blame game at all. She shares circumstances that obviously shaped her life, but she doesn't say, oh, it was that fault, that was the problem, that what's caused this. But underlying, you see some of those things come through like this, like the mistaken teaching in Churches of Christ about men and women and what they can do and what they can't do. And I think that definitely sent the wrong message to a young Nadia. And that when she ended up where she was, she might not say that's what caused her to leave Christianity, but it didn't help. And it does cause some young women to decide, this isn't for me. About the 4th chapter, she makes this confession. But it turns out I hadn't actually escaped the sorting system. I had just changed the labels. I think that's a powerful statement too, because it's a chapter you need to look at, because that's what we do most of the time. We say, I'm getting out of this system. I'm never going to stick to something like this again. I'm going to be free. And so we leave this church and we go to that church, or we leave this religion and go to that religion to be free of the very things that we find in the next religion eventually. It always happens. Some of these changes are not healthy. So when she reaches this place called Albion Babylon, she says this: I have learned something by belonging to 2 polar opposite communities, Albion Babylon and the Church of Christ, and I wanted them to hear me. This community will disappoint them. Now she's talking to the Albion community. It's a matter of when, not if. We will let them down, or I'll say something stupid and hurt their feelings. I then invite them on this side of their inevitable disappointment to decide if they'll stick around after it happens. If they choose to leave when we don't meet their expectations, they won't get to see how the grace of God can come in and fill the holes left by our community's failure. And that's just too beautiful and too real to miss. I can't think of another pastor who has ever said it even close to as well as that. And it's the idea that we can take seriously the fact that we're not perfect. I liked earlier in the chapter 2 when she talks about how there's a big difference between being good and God's grace, and how so many of us have settled for the idea that I'm a Christian if I'm good. And then she says this is exactly, when it comes down to it, why most people do not believe in grace. Is carajo offensive. By the way, the name of the church she pastors is House for All Sinners and Saints. And I'm not sure, but I think the pronunciation of the acronym that it creates is like half-ass. And I think that's a pretty good name for her church. Now here's a quote for pastors out there. I just can't preach something I don't believe. Actually, that's not true. I can preach something I hope to be true, even something I dared to be true. What I can't bear, though, is the thought of preaching something I suspect might not be true. Okay, obviously I can't read the whole book to you on a book review, but I want to share 2 major quotes now, and those will be my last ones. New doesn't always look perfect. Like the Easter story itself, new is often messy. New looks like recovering alcoholics. New looks like reconciliation between family members who don't actually deserve it. New looks like every time I manage to admit I was wrong, and every time I manage to not mention when I'm right. New looks like every fresh start and every act of forgiveness and every moment of letting go of what we thought we couldn't live without, and then somehow living without it anyway. New is the thing we never saw coming, never even hoped for, but ends up being what we needed all along. That's what this book is about. It's about being made new. But it's not being made new in the image of anybody else. It's being made new with what we start with. And I can't explain it any better than she did. But it's the idea that God takes who we really are and resurrects himself in us out of that. So we're new people. And then my favorite story in the book goes back to the time when she had to tell her parents what she was going to do with her life. This is a heartwarming moment. She's with her mom and dad, and she's telling them that she's decided to become a pastor. And after she tells them that, her dad goes to a bookshelf and pulls down the Bible. He opened it up and read. I could tell from where he was turning that it wasn't one of Paul's letters at the end of the book, but something closer to the middle. My father did not read the 1 Timothy passage about women being silent in church. He read from Esther. From my father I heard only these words, "But you were born for such a day as this." He closed the book, and my mother joined him in embracing me. They prayed over me, and they gave me a blessing. And some blessings, like the one my conservative Christian parents gave to their soon-to-be Lutheran pastor daughter who had put them through hell, are the kind of blessings that stay with you for the rest of your life. The kind you can't speak of without crying all over again. Here's my recommendation. Read the book. Ignore the parts that seem too in your face. recommend it to your friends, and warn them. It's nothing worse than an R-rated movie. In fact, probably nicer than an R-rated movie. And there are a lot of Christians that will go to that. But this book challenges so many amazing misconceptions that we carry on as Christians. And it takes us to a level where nice just doesn't cut it. Where nice is no longer the real basis of our Christianity. I was kind of sad toward the end of the book, but I learned from her. I was kind of sad that some people who were not on the edge of society, edge of life, edge of existence, that some people who were not there, but some suburbanites who heard about this really cool church were starting to come. And she explained, she said, I had to learn to accept them just as I had always wanted to be accepted, even though I was different. I worry about those people getting into her church. I hope it doesn't ruin it for her. I hope that she gets continue pastoring people in the way that she does it. It's unique. It's not to be copied, but it's a hell of a story, I tell you. God bless you. Thank you for your time.